feel like you're an introvert, you have to just understand that you can change. It's trained. It's a muscle. Your ability to be comfortable in uncomfortable situations is a muscle. And the only way to build muscle is to go to the gym and lift the weight. You can't read about muscle. You can't study muscle. You can't just build workout plans and eat protein. You have to go to the gym and lift weights. So that means you have to get out and practice, and you have to sign up for a debate club.
So, hi everyone, welcome back to the podcast. So, today I'm super stoked and honored, in fact, to announce that we have a guest joining us all the way from USA. We have Nick Huber, who is a phenomenal business operator. Nick, would love to kind of dive into like your journey from Cornell University to kind of building businesses. Like, what does it take to become world class at being an operator and being in business? And like, what have you learned in your journey as a business person? Because like, it's kind of like not the exact path that most people from Cornell take to like start their own business or to become entrepreneurs. So like, yeah, would love to know your journey and your insights.
Yeah, Roohi, thanks for having me. So I think I've learned something. The main learning that I've had in my life is that it's a lot easier to operate companies when you're making a profit and when you have cash flow. And I didn't have that at the beginning. So I'm very lucky that I started a small, sweaty startup, a boring business, a pickup and delivery storage company, and kind of used that business to acquire what I have now, which is the operational experience and the network and the cash to kind of operate at a little bit of a higher level. So built that business through to 2015. We started a self-storage development project, real estate development in Ithaca, and built that building, completed it in 2017. It's been a really good deal, and we ended up selling the moving and storage company, Storage Squad, in 2021, January of 2021, and kind of building a real estate portfolio, and now kind of getting involved in some other businesses as well. So it's been a long journey. I think one of the things to note is that business is about momentum, and you can start really small, and when 10 years go by, you'll find yourself in an amazing situation.
Amazing. And I loved your point on momentum. I think momentum is key for everything, not just in business, but also internet, building leverage. And I would also love to get into that like as you go along further into this podcast. But I'd love to now touch into your new book. So you have a new book that's coming out pretty soon. So would just love to know like some. So I had a read through of it a bit, and I had found some interesting concepts from it. So yeah, we just love to kind of give the audience now a sense of like what's the book about, and then we'll dive deep into like some of the key concepts that I found that were quite interesting from the book.
Yeah, it's a book written for me when I first started my entrepreneurial journey. That's who I wrote it for. And it's the things I wish I knew about running a company and hiring and delegating and selling and making decisions, through all of my experience. And I think I kind of found a lot of business books in this world you can get, 2 or 3 great concepts from, and I think it's still worth reading those books. But my goal was to kind of deliver 2 or 3 really high value, items per chapter or per page. So it's really short, it's really succinct, and tell a lot of stories about how to build a business. But the big idea of the book is that it's not always about technology. It's not always about venture capital. It's not always about changing the world. You can build a really good business by looking in your town and your neighborhood and starting really small with something boring.
Yeah, so let's get into that. So on your book, there was like some points that you wrote about boring businesses. So how do you kind of identify and evaluate these boring businesses? Since most of the guests I've had on have been like venture capitalists, startup founders, so most people are not kind of familiar with this kind of territory. So would love to know like anything that you could share on that front as well.
Yeah, when I look at who the wealthy people are that I know personally in my town, or friends of mine, very few of them raised venture capital, started a new idea business, a new app, a new technology startup, an AI startup, a Web3 startup, whatever it might be. Almost all of them started a old-fashioned sweaty startup where they're running underground utility cables, or they run a couple waste management companies, or they have a couple tree removal franchises, or a quick service restaurant, or they buy real estate, or they sell insurance. So the wealthy people that I know, and I'm talking about seriously wealthy, almost all of them did something that was already a proven model. Okay, yes, they out-operated, they innovated, they did things really well, they executed really well, but they didn't have a new idea. So a sweaty startup Could be anything. It could be an internet business as well, but it's something that's not new and groundbreaking. It's in a proven space, in a proven model, and other companies are out there making money today doing that thing. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they get in the culture, they get engulfed in the startup culture online of, TechCrunch, Shark Tank, new idea, Silicon Valley, raise money. They're following everybody on Twitter, talk about AI or Web3 or whatever the next best thing is. And they forget about all these proven business models that can make you really good money if you show up and do things the right way.
It's really interesting that you mentioned about these boring business opportunities and like how people are just chasing the glamour of VC funding, and that's not the path that they should be going on. That's what you're trying to like. That's your whole like thesis and your brand and like everything that you're about. So
it's all about playing it's all about playing the odds. People think like, I think you should think about entrepreneurship as if you're a poker player sitting at the poker table, and chips are your time. Okay, so you have a choice to play hands and invest chips and bet chips on different ideas. Okay, you can move your chips forward and put time towards that specific business. What people don't realize is that, okay, if you're going to take a big moonshot and try to change the world, you can definitely make $1 billion. You could become a billionaire. But there's a 99.999% chance that that's not going to happen. But if you start one of these boring businesses, you might not become a billionaire, but you might be able to make $30,000 a month, or any amount of money that it requires for you to build a great life and live a great life. So I think when you weigh the odds of success, it's a pretty clear advantage to be focusing on some of these non-sexy, not new ideas.
Amazing. So would love to kind of get into so there's a concept in your book where you mentioned something about Franken businesses. So I would just love to know, like, what was some of these Franken businesses that you would personally start in 2025 or onwards? And given that you have like a vast amount of experience operating companies and you're like one of the best in the biz, so could you just share like some insights that you could share on that?
So I think when people read my message of don't have a new idea, they confuse it for not innovating. And I innovate a lot inside of my companies. And one of my favorite things to do is look at the way all of my competitors do business. So when I was in the storage business in the very early days, I looked at all my competitors. There were 20 or 30 of them actively operating and making money. That's another good thing about sweaty startups, is you can see how it's done. You can watch how the competitors are interacting with their clients. And I picked bits and pieces operationally from all these companies. One company in Indiana did a thing called hotspots, where they showed up in one area and they dropped off a ton of packing supplies to all the customers at a specific time. We adopted that. Another company had a signature box that they charged a certain amount for, and it was a certain size and had branding on it. We named our own box and we adopted that model too. Another box had kind of pickup locations where all the customers would bring locations to them. Another company used an app with tracking and Google Drive to kind of update schedules live. So we did all those things and built a Franken business off of all these different competitors and how they did business. And what we were left with was one of the largest and best operated pickup and delivery storage companies in the business. So I love looking out at the market, analyzing my competitors, and stealing bits and pieces that work really well for them and bolting them onto my business so that I'm left with a company that can operate well and run well and make profit.
Amazing. So would love to kind of know about this whole concept of personal cash flow. So a lot of people who may be listening today may not know about cash flow and how they can leverage boring business to kind of create this personal cash flow for themselves. So what would you say to somebody that's starting out today who wants to start building out some personal cash flow? What kind of business, or what would you say to them? Like, what is your advice for the younger you?
I would say start with the end in mind and do a serious analysis of how much cash you actually need to have freedom to do what you want to do. Too many entrepreneurs, they set the bar at building $1 billion company or making $100 million or doing whatever, or they don't even have a goal in mind at all. But I like the practice of getting in and looking at what you need as an entrepreneur to live the life you want to live. Like, start with that goal in mind. And when I was in 2012, when I did this exercise, a year out of college, I realized I wanted $20,000 a month coming in, and I could live the life of my dreams. Many areas in the world are much more affordable, but I was living in Boston. I wanted to have a safe vehicle for my family. I wanted to have a decent apartment or house. I wanted to be able to play golf at a country club. I wanted to be able to do these things. I wanted to be able to go look at a menu at a restaurant and order without worrying about the price. Little things like that that could make me be able to live the life I wanted to live. And set a number. My number was $20,000 a month. So then I stood back and unemotionally, it didn't matter what I wanted. It wasn't selfish. It was not about me. I said, what's the thing that I can do that increase my odds of achieving that goal of $20,000 a month? And how can I increase the odds and play the game that's more likely to get me to where I want to be? So I think setting a personal cash flow goal is something that so few entrepreneurs actually do. And it impacts their decision making. If you want to make $1 billion, then yes, go try to change the world. You need to have a big company. You need to go public. You need to have an acquisition. But if you want to live the life you want to live, sometimes it's a totally different approach.
Yeah, I think that's a really good kind of pro and con kind of analogy over there. And so I would just love to know, like, who are the founders that you're betting big on in 2025? And what is it that, kind of attracts you to, like, want to root for them, support them, and, like, yeah, just like what is the archetype of founders that you support and you kind of rally behind?
I think as a startup, you have a disadvantage in almost every area of business. Your competitors have more cash, they have more marketing, they have better sales, they have more brand awareness, they get more referrals, they have an infrastructure and a company in place that creates money in every month, and that's a massive advantage. All those things are big advantages. They can afford to spend more on marketing, they can afford to hire people, they can afford to do all the things that you can't afford to do as a founder. Your one advantage is speed. You can make decisions in the morning and they can be in place inside your business before lunch. And if you can move very fast and you can test and you can try and you can go sell and you can experiment, then you are way, way more likely to win. And it's frankly your only advantage in the early days. So I stay away from people who overanalyze, meaning like I'm going to study, aim, shoot. I like founders who get out, mix it up, try to make money, shoot, aim, shoot, aim, shoot, aim, shoot, aim. If that makes sense.
Of course, of course. So, we'd just love to know, like, do you actually do private equity? And if so, like, what are some of these deals that you've kind of, how do you evaluate the private equity deals?
So I've done two forms of private equity, both on a pretty small scale compared to traditional private equity. I raised $20 million to buy somewhere.com through a private equity structure. And then I've raised about $40 million to buy about $100 million worth of real estate here in the United States, self-storage and industrial. So, it's not a traditional private equity business where we're going to buy bits of companies that are much larger. We're going to have a $500 million fund. I'm on kind of the small end of the deal, but that's kind of how my things are structured.
Yeah, I think I was watching a podcast of yours where you shared about like the businesses that you've been a part of and like how those deals came about. And yeah, it's amazing that you must have got some amazing returns out of that as well, because like you're one of the really good operators out there who knows their business fundamentals and knows the business sense. So yeah, and you also built like a amazing audience as well on X and LinkedIn and some of these social media platforms. So just wanted to kind of get your advice before we kind of get into your hot takes on college and building confidence as a young person. Like how did you kind of decide, like, social media is where you have to be, and like, what are some of your like top learnings or top things that you could share for somebody that's starting their journey on X or LinkedIn or some of these other social media platforms? Like, how do you crack these platforms, and like how do you excel in what you're posting and what you're sharing with the internet?
So I think I have some bad news for people who maybe want a shortcut, because there's no shortcut. But if you're not doing anything interesting, it's really hard to build a following. So unless you're out trying to start a company or building a business, or you've had a little bit of success in business, people filter information that comes on the internet based on the quality of the source, frankly. So if Elon Musk tweets one thing, or Steve Jobs tweets, or Mark Zuckerberg tweets something, and if Nick Huber tweets something, people are going to listen more to Mark Zuckerberg, of course. So if you want to build a following on social media, the first step is to do something interesting. If you're not doing anything, it's really, really hard. Nobody wants to follow somebody who just regurgitates, old entrepreneur stories or something like that, right? But then once you start doing something, whether it's building a business, building a media company, whatever, my method was just being radically open. I shared my profit and loss statements. I shared how I got customers. I shared my strategies, and it opened up a ton of doors for me. So my method on social media very early was to just be radically open about my business and how I do things. And it changed everything for me.
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast, and they were kind of breaking down, like I think it was with Pomp, and you were like breaking down like your whole business model, the many different aspects of the business, and it was just fascinating to learn and just to see how much of an open book you were. And so yeah, my next kind of thing that I would like to get into is, so how do you build confidence as a young person? So a lot of people are like underconfident, they don't know how to talk to strangers. So what is like your advice for them to become more confident and to start to have these conversations with strangers, and how can they go about doing that?
I think it's so important, and I'm so glad you asked. And I actually feel very passionately about parenting now because I have young children that I'm trying to instill these things in, because it starts at a very young age. You went to college at a high-end college in the United States. So did I. I'm sure you saw a lot of people all the way around you who their parents did everything for them. Like their parents put them in a bubble. Their parents made decisions. Their parents bought their books. Their parents scheduled their Ubers. Their parents helped them pick their classes. All of it. You have to practice making decisions and living with the consequences to get that confidence. And you have to practice talking to people and be forced to talk to people at a very young age. So I like doing a lot of things with my kids that kind of get them a little bit outside their comfort zone when it comes to talking to adults, socializing with adults. But if you're in college or out of college and you still feel like you're an introvert, you have to just understand that you can change. It's trained. It's a muscle. Your ability to be comfortable in uncomfortable situations is a muscle. And the only way to build muscle is to go to the gym and lift the weight. You can't read about muscle. You can't study muscle. You can't just build workout plans and eat protein. You have to go to the gym and lift weights. So that means you have to get out and practice, and you have to sign up for a debate club or go to a public speaking class or do some of these things to build the muscle so that you start to feel comfortable being uncomfortable. It never gets easy. Walking into a podcast interview every single time before I hit enter room, it's always a little bit uncomfortable, always a little bit of nerves, but you just get used to handling it. So that's the advice I have for sure.
Amazing, amazing. And I just would love to end with your hot takes on college and university. And what would you have done differently now that you've gone through the university system of the US, and you have some of your own kind of takes on it as well? Like I've seen on X some things that you posted. So would just love to like distill, like what are some words that you have on college and universities?
So first of all, I think college is still very important. I'm still going to send my kids to college. A lot of people say college is worthless. I don't think that's true. I as an 18-year-old, I was not ready to go get married and get a job and start my life. So I spent college learning how to socialize, learning how to, growing up, learning how to sell myself and my ideas, learning how to get in relationships with people, and date and do all the important things in life that are not necessarily in the classroom. But I'm kind of down on super high-end colleges at the moment because I think they're a ton of work to get into. They don't necessarily reward a balanced life in high school. And so, yeah, I think I'm going to send my kids to a Southern state school that's not necessarily a top academic university, but has a lot of normal kids with normal values and go from there.
Yeah, I think it's so important to kind of like know what to kind of learn from your mistakes also, and have lots of learnings. And I think this episode was like packed with a ton of learnings on business, operating, real estate, private equity, so many different topics that we touched on today, and as well as your new book. So yeah, would just love to like know from you now, like how can the audience reach you, social media links, like what you want to share. Like now's this kind of stage for that, and I'll put all of those in the show links as well.
Yeah, so the most visited page of my website, I have a blog called The Sweaty Startup where we talk about this stuff. The most visited page of all time is a list of 200 plus business ideas. And they're not AI startups, they're not Web3 startups, they're not technology startups, they're old-fashioned bootstrappable businesses. So you can go look at that page on my website and download the list at sweatystartup.com/ideas. That's a really good place to start. And then, yeah, people can send me an email, nick@sweatystartup.com. Folks can reach out to me on Twitter, on X, at Sweaty Startup. So, yeah, and then the book came out this week, which I'm really excited about, and kind of as a guide to all that stuff. And it's available all over the world. And you can find it on Amazon or wherever books are made. It's called The Sweaty Startup.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much for your time.